Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 125 of our Planet Zoo mod showcases. We took a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them, or talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got a very interesting assortment of animals, mostly new guys, but not too like big and interesting. So this might be a little bit of a shorter one, but there's still some really interesting animals that I'm going to talk about. A couple extinct ones, especially a couple South American animals that I'm really excited to talk about, and very interesting assortments. So we're going to get started today with Lorbee's mods. We've got here. This is the Oriental Stalk. Yes, just making sure that's the right one. So the Oriental Stalk, or known in Japanese as the Konotori, I believe you say that, or its scientific name is Chitolona boycolona, something like that. These guys are quite a large white bird with black feathered wings, and is a member of the stork family, so it's a type of stork. Was first described by Robert Swinhoe in 1873, and was believed to be a subspecies of the European white stork, but now is treated as its own species. These guys are quite big, so they're typically larger than the white stork. They get to about 100 to 129 centimeters, or about 39 to 51 inches long, 110 to 150 centimeters, or about 43 to 59 inches tall, and weigh between 2.8 and 5.9 kilograms, or about 6 to 13 pounds, and then have a wingspan of about 2.22 meters, or about 7 feet 3 inches. And unlike its more widespread cousin, the main difference with the Oriental Stork is that it has a red skin around its eyes. You can kind of see that there, with a whitish iris and a black bill, as you can see that there. And both sexes are quite similar, though the females are slightly smaller than the males. And the young are white with orange bills, which I don't think are actually represented here. It's still really, really cute. We'll carry on. We'll talk about more of the baby soon. So these guys are found around the kind of Oriental area. So they're found in Japan, Korea, Siberia, and Manchuria. And they were actually once extirpated from Japan and the Korean Peninsula. But there was, in May 2007, a hatchling had been recorded in Japan, and was the first time they'd bred in Japan in over 40 years. So that's a big conservation win. And it was the offspring of two storks that were born in captivity. So shows that those reintroduction efforts are actually helping. So that's quite cool. So they are endangered, as we'll get into. So due to habitat loss and overhunting, the Oriental Stork is classified as endangered by the IUCN and is listed as Appendix 1. And as I mentioned before, there have been attempts to reintroduce the storks into the wild, but there must be change in the environment. First, as I mentioned, there's lots of habitat loss going on and poaching. Also, big things as well have been harshly impacted by the growth of the rice industry and pesticides. So, like pesticides such as DDT that can hurt their eggs and hurt their reproduction. Very similar thing happened to bald eagles and animals like that. And there also is a push for rice farmers to try and grow their rice more organically, so the storks can actually breed and grow in safety in these environments, not with worrying about pesticides and things like that, which are very, very bad for these guys. In terms of diet and behavior, their diet is not too dissimilar from most other species of storks. They're a solitary bird, except during the breeding season, when they come up in big groups. They like to wade around marshes, pond edges, wetlands, and coastal beaches, so they're pretty much always found in and around water. And they're apex predators within their habitats, and pretty generous, so they mainly feed on fishes, frogs, insects, small birds, reptiles, and even small mammals such as rodents, shrews, that kind of thing. And in terms of breeding, the female will usually lay about 2 to 6 eggs when she's breeding, and after breeding, they will migrate. So they typically breed up more north in China and Siberia. That's where they typically breed. And then during the non-breeding season, so during the winter, they will migrate down into eastern China and into Japan and Taiwan. And then in September, return in March, we'll return back up to north to breed. So yeah, really, really cool animals. I think Lorbee has done a really wonderful job of giving us a cool stork, trying to complete the stork collection. Really, really awesome. So next up, we got another bird. This next one's done by Nora Waller, and it's an extinct bird, as we'll get to talk into. A lot of paleo mods today. So we've got here the big-billed penguin, or its scientific name is is a Spinacurus megaramphus, which means a large beak in Latin. So these guys are an extinct species of penguin. They're in the same genus as banded penguins, such as the Magellan penguin, African penguin, those kind of animals. They're closely related to those guys. But they're from the late Miocene of the in Peru of South America. They're also quite notable for being the largest species of banded penguin known, and since they're basically comparable in size to a emperor penguin, they're a little bit over about, or a king penguin, like a little bit about a meter tall, and quite a bit larger than the modern banded penguins. They also have that, you can see that long, proportionally large beak, which is kind of one of their big defining features compared to other species that they lived with. So these guys were found and described in 2003 by Mario Sanucci, who found them in the Pisco Formation in the Pisco Basin of southwestern Peru. And the Pisco Formation is a very interesting formation. Megalodon is known from this formation, but there's all sorts of really cool marine animals from this ecosystem. There's multiple species of these penguins. There's giant marine gharials. There's also the Thalassocnus, which is the sea sloth. So there was like basically ground sloths that adapted to living in the water. There's also Leviathan and many other types of whales and dolphins and things, and Megalodon, as I mentioned. So it was a very rich environment with lots of animals, and these guys were one of the animals that lived in that habitat. So let's see if we can find one swimming. There must be one swimming over here. I think it's kind of gone now. They're all come back up. Let's see if we can find one swimming. I don't see one yet. We'll have to follow one swimming. Anyway. These guys are about 3 feet high, so they're about the same size as a king penguin, you could say. And these guys were significantly larger and more robust than any modern kind of living banded penguin. And their beak was also proportionally much bigger than these extant penguins. And the back of the beak of it actually extends the length of its cranium, while in Humboldt's penguin it was roughly equal in length. So this guy has a huge beak. And this guy was actually not alone in the Pisco Formation. These guys lived with a couple other species of banded penguins that are extinct now, called with Missouri and Urbany, which is the Urbany was actually similar in size to Megaramphus, but they were slightly smaller and had smaller beaks. So why did these guys have such huge beaks? It's believed these guys would have evolved these beaks to hunt larger prey. So as with living banded penguins, these guys would have swum around in water feeding on fish and squid that it ate, and also has evidence from the skull of a salt gland that they would use to get rid of excess salt, basically by crying them out. And they actually had a comparably large salt gland compared to a lot of other penguins. So these guys may have been especially pelagics. So these guys would have been quite well adapted and living in the ocean. So these guys may have been much more pelagic, which is quite interesting. I just want to see one swimming, but there doesn't seem to be one swimming around at the moment. They seem to just be hanging out all over here today, which I can't blame them though, but still really, really cool animals. Let's see if you're going to swim for me. Come on, you're going to do it? Oh, there's you over there. Let's see. He's going to swim for me. Let's have a look at you swim. Yeah, really, really cool. As I mentioned, the Pisco Formation is really, really interesting formation filled with all sorts of interesting animals. But yeah, I really like this rendition as well. As you can see, it's very similar to your most typical banded penguins, but it's also got a little bit distinguishing it. That really big beak and a little bit of a feather crown going on there. Really, really awesome. So yeah, we're not going to see much swimming, I don't think, unless you're going to dive in for us. Come on, you're going to do it. Go on, do it for me, please. Please. I like also the eyes as well, those red eyes. And it's very similar to most other penguin irises. Really, really cool. I like that little bit of pink there as well. Gives it a little bit of a distinct personality, things like that. So yeah, really awesome rendition of the extinct penguin here, the Megaramphus, or the big-billed penguin, done by Norwaller, who always does a really awesome paleomods. And speaking of Norwaller, we've also got another paleomod coming from him. We have got one that's a little bit more recent in history from the Miocene. We're going to have a look at the Silverorus, I believe you say that, Silverorus, or the New Caledonian Dew, which is kind of the name for it. So Silverorus was a genus of extinct large flightless bird that was found in New Caledonia in the Western Pacific. And there are 2 species known. There's Silverorus, this one here, or 2 genera known. So there's Silverorus neocaledonia, which is the species here, And there's also Megalodon from Fiji. And these guys are actually in their own family. They are closely related to galliforms, though. So their closest living relatives are animals such as turkeys, chickens, quails, and pheasants. But they're their own kind of family of large bird related to the galliforms. And they were never counted alive by scientists, but they have been known from many thousands of subfossil remains. So we do have a pretty good idea of what they're like. For New Caledonia and some close islands, and it's believed they likely were hunted to extinction shortly after people came to New Caledonia at about 15,000 BC. So these guys, as you can see, they're quite big flightless birds. So these guys stand at about 1.2 to 1.6 meters, about 3 to 5 feet tall, and weigh about 40 kilograms on average. And in the 2016 study, they were kind of estimated to be about 0.8 meters and about 27 to 34 kilograms, believed to be. So that's the newer estimates. A little bit smaller, but still like 30 kilograms. So it's quite huge. They're the most massive pelagiform known to have ever existed, and probably because of island dwarfism. You know, they found themselves on these islands. They were able to take that niche of kind of the big herbivore, and also kind of lost the flight and things like that. Good example of island gigantism. And you can see they have a large skull with a very high pointed beak, which is also surmounted by a bony knob. So this is kind of interpreted as well as like having a crest, which is really, really interesting. And they have a number of really weird things about their anatomy and their skeleton that are really different about the birds. For example, their clavicles were not fused to the furcula. They have a high number of caudal vertebrae or tail vertebrae, and their rib cage and pelvis were almost very similar to dinosaurs in a lot of way, and they had very small wings. So it's very likely they had some of these adaptations to kind of adapted for walking around and foraging on the ground a lot more, and being a bit bigger as well probably helps to support their weight. There's also native accounts of what these guys would have been like in life. So this is also based from the native accounts, their colors. So it's likely that it would have been a bird reddish in color, and that star-shaped carapace on their head is kind of where this interpretation comes from as well. And they're also described being flightless because of their smaller wings, and they were much better runners. So in terms of other things about these guys, the anatomy of the skull suggests that these guys had reduced optic loads, as well as a well-developed sense of smell. So these guys may have been adapted for living more at night, or come out at night, or be more crepuscular, or that just means they're going to be used to living in darker forests as well. And we don't know their diet, but assumed from their morphology of their beak and their feet, these guys were most likely herbivores, feeding on low vegetation and digging up roots and tubers and things like that. Or there also has been suggestions of them being invertebrate predators, but I believe the herbivore one's a little bit more likely. Also, the large proportion of deposits are found actually juvenile animals, and they're actually believed to have clutched at least 2, but more closer to 10 eggs, which is actually pretty weird for an island bird. They bred surprisingly fast. And there's estimates that the average lifespan was not much more than 5 to 7 years, which is actually pretty low for a bird of that size. And this is thought that the birds do not incubate their eggs, but created a mound, well, like a megapode, where they would have just dumped leaves on it and left them to incubate, which is quite interesting. And they also believed that they were originally need to be graves for human goods, but then they were also found to be hypothesized as incubation mounds for Silverorus, which is really interesting. And these mounds were up to like 5 meters tall and 50 meters wide, which existed even after 4 million millennia, may have been seemed way too big to be made by scrubfowl, which is an extinct giant scrubfowl, which is an extinct New Caledonian relative of the megapode, or a New Caledonian extinct megapode. So it seems like these guys may have actually made these big mounds, which was quite interesting. However, more recent analyses, this bird as an outsider, not even particularly related to manipodes, makes it unlikely that they made these big piles. So it shows how science is always changing. So you look at something and then it's like, oh no, not really. They're not really closely related to your megapodes, so they most likely didn't have those same behaviors unless they convergently evolved them. But yeah, that's also quite interesting. Though in native counts, these guys would lay 1 egg during November and April that was not incubated, covered, and protected in any way. However, the adults were quite aggressive. So yeah, a little interesting about that. And then we have a look at that cute little baby here. Really, really cute little guy. So in terms of their history, these guys were the most common fossil animal in New Caledonia and often found in human contexts. And they were likely hunted to extinction by the natives or Lapia ancestors of the Kanak people who settled New Caledonia about 15,000 BCE. And the most recent evidence of the species was carbon dated to about 11,200 to 840 BCE. And if native accounts are correct, most like a lot of other island species, they become quite naive to predation because they're quite slow breeding. They don't have like flight or flight behaviors. So the eggs and hatchling would have been quite vulnerable to mammalian predators that were introduced, such as Polynesian rats, also like dogs and things like that. But also, they probably didn't run in fear of humans, and like the dodo, humans probably could have just picked them off. But yeah, really, really awesome. I love this reconstruction. It's based off native accounts. Also, the anatomy as well. It's just a very interesting and cool bird, and it's nice to see it in Planet Zoo. Really awesome that Nawala decided to make it. I love like the star carapace it's got going on. It's really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. So, next up, we've got another cool animal here. We've got the Cuban crocodile. So, this one was done by Loskany, which I don't think has actually done a mod before. So, we've got a new modder on the scene. But yeah, really, really cool animals. Let's talk about the Cuban crocodile. So the Cuban crocodile, or Crocodilus rhombifer, these guys are a small to medium-sized crocodilian endemic to Cuba. So they're quite a small animal, and they are closely related to other types of like newer crocodilians, such as Morlet's crocodile and Orinoco crocodile and things like that. And they have a number of characteristics that set them apart from other crocodiles. These guys are quite a bit brighter than adult crocodiles. They're also got more pebbled scales and quite big, long legs compared to a lot of other crocodilians. And they're also quite small compared to a lot of the crocodilians. They're small to medium sized. Typical adults measure from between 2.1 to 2.3 meters, or about 6 to 7 feet in length. Um, and weigh about 70 to 80 kilograms, or about 150, 180 pounds. Though large males can get up to about 11 feet long and weigh up to about 215 kilograms or more. So they can get quite big, but nowhere near as big as like saltwater crocodiles and things like that. In terms of their distribution, though, today they can only be found in Cuba's Samtata Bay Swamp and Isla de Juvidad, where they're highly endangered. So these guys are considered critically endangered. They're only found in a couple of small areas now. But they would have formerly ranged across the Caribbean, and fossils of them have been found in the Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, and Hispaniola. And the Cuban crocodile seems to prefer freshwater habitats such as salts, marshes, and rivers, and they really do not often come and swim in open waters, ocean waters. I mean, what's going on here? Oh yeah, there's only one in here. I forgot to put the other one in here, I think, but it's all right. We'll have a look at you. Let you swim. The only difference is like male and female size, not a drama. Oh, wait, no, I think there is actually one in. No, we won't worry about it. But yeah, really, really cool animal. We love these crocodiles. So in terms of their biology and behavior, they've been observed to display peculiar behavior not observed in other crocodilians. So a colony of the species has exhibited pack hunting. So these guys are quite good pack hunters. And this may explain the predation of the megafauna that lived around the Caribbean, such as giant Caribbean sloths and giant tortoises as well, that coexisted with these guys. And this behavior has actually prompted a lot of interest in these guys. And though they usually keep singly, they're kind of usually kept singly, so they're kind of thinking, oh, maybe we should house them together more. And also, as well, they seem to be the most terrestrial of all the crocodilians. They have reduced webbing in their feet as well, and they're also considered highly intelligent and even exhibit a lot of unusual behaviors among lots of crocodilians. And also quite well known for galloping, so they are quite efficient on land, which is also quite interesting. In terms of their diet, these guys feed on small fish, invertebrates, crustaceans, and arthropods, makes the diet of most young Cuban crocodiles, I mean. Adults of the species feed on small mammals, fish, and turtles, and they have blunt teeth to aid them in crushing, very similar. And they've also demonstrated the jumping feeding technique, very similar to things like American alligators, where they can jump out of the water. And though they're not a particularly large species, they're actually regarded as the most aggressive New World crocodilian, and is behaviorally dominant over the larger American crocodile, where they can be found together. And data is limited, but it's likely these guys, given these rare, very small distribution area and separation from human population, so these guys don't really attack humans much because they're just so remote and really found and so rare at the moment. Though it's most likely if there were more of them, there'd be more attacks. And despite the reported aggression, there's only been one reported human fatality, which was an elderly man that was attacked and killed by a Cuban crocodile in 1995, and he's a part of swamp while spearfishing. So I think we'll grab the female out. Let's do that real quick. So I left it in here because I know they have an issue with. Yeah, we'll put you in here. Put the female in here. So there is an issue with these guys. They crash when they have babies. So I put the female in here because she was pregnant and it caused my game to crash. But yeah, look at these wonderful guys. I cannot love them. So we'll keep talking about these guys. So the mating season for the Cuban crocodile is between May and July, and it's thought to be related to environmental changes such as temperature and rainfall. And in the wild, they'll nest in wet marshes where they create trenches and cover the eggs with organic material. Though in captivity, they will create mounds. During the nesting period, Cuban crocodiles will lay between 30 to 40 eggs and have an estimated period time between 58 and 70 days. And hatching occurs typically from late August to early September. And due to the predation of humans, raccoons, and other animals, many of the eggs will not hatch. And at birth, the hatchlings are approximately 2 to 3 inches long and a fourth of a pound of weight. And as with other crocodilians, the sex of a baby Cuban crocodile is determined by the temperature of the nest. So if it's like certain different temperatures, male and females, things like that. So in conservation, typically the eggs are kept at about 32 degrees in order to produce males in incubators, and females are typically a bit lower. Cuban crocodiles are an aggressive species and have been known to perform in cannibalism, and this is contributing, in fact, to why many of the babies will actually not live till their adult stage. As I get you, cutie. But in 2012, there were actually two Cuban crocodiles born in conservation at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. It was the first time in 25 years where the Cuban crocodile has been sexually bred at the zoo. So, great win for conservation. As I mentioned, they are quite rare. So, in terms of their conservation, they have quite restricted habitats and quite a restricted range, which makes them quite vulnerable to habitat loss. Humans also hunted the species to near extinction, with much research remains to be done with wild population, but they're well presented in captivity. There's one zoo in India with them, but in Europe and United States there's zoos with them, with breeding projects taking place. Though they are worried about hybridization, especially with American crocodiles, where they limits the pure gene pool of the species. But they have been bred in zoos across the world, which shows that they do well in captivity, and they have been attacked people in captivity. But they are quite endangered, so it's kind of sad. I'd really love to see like restoration projects because what a restricted range. I'd like to see them reintroduced to places such as Hispaniola or the Bahamas or the Cayman Islands where they could be reintroduced. That would be really, really cool, but I'm not sure how recently that's going to happen. But yeah, really, really cool animal. I love these wonderful crocodilians. So next up, we have got the Arctic hare. So this one was done by Narwhal again. The Cuban crocodile is done by Lonsky, which is a completely new modder, but now we've got the Arctic hare. So let's have a look at these guys. So really, really awesome mod. So the Arctic hare, or Leptis arcticus, if you say that, they're a species of hare that are quite well adapted for the Arctic tundra, which is quite interesting. They're also the largest living lagomorph, which is a lot of owls there. So that's the group that includes rabbits, pikas, and things like that. The Arctic hare is the largest living lagomorph. They typically reach between 43 and 70 centimeters, or between 17 and 28 inches long, not counting the tail length of about 5 to 10 centimeters. They also have a body mass of between 2 to 5 kilograms, so between 6 to 12 pounds, that they have been reported getting up to 15 pounds, or about 7 kilograms. So these guys are typically found around the most northern regions of Greenland, the Canada Arctic, and northern Canada. They can be found on Ellesmere Island as well as in Labrador and Newfoundland. They're also well adapted to conditions of tundras, plateaus, and treeless regions that have a lot of cold weather. And they've also been found at elevations up to about 3,000 feet. But in Newfoundland and southern Labrador, they can actually change their colors. So they have a grey summer coat and then they molt into this white winter coat as well. Very similar to species such as the ermine and the ptarmigan, which are both species they live with. And it allows them to stay camouflaged in their habitat. Though in places more northernly, they will stay white all year round. So in terms of their feeding, or in terms of their food, these guys are herbivores, specifically folivores. So they feed on woody plants, like Arctic willow being a lot of their diet as well. They'll also feed like in crowberry, dwarf willow, and all sorts of things, including lichens and mosses, and causing seaweed as well, and twigs and roots, so pretty much anything they can find in that regard. The Arctic hare diets are more diverse in the summer, And they've also been observed feeding on meat occasionally. They'll eat fish and sometimes eat the stomach contents of caribou, which is quite interesting. When they're dead, they find them. And they also eat snow to get water. So some of the really interesting adaptations these guys have is adapted to living in the cold Arctic. So let me find one over here. You see their camouflage there. You can see they're white, the same as the snow. Um, they have many interesting adaptations. They actually have a lower metabolic rate than most other species of lagomorph, but they have a low surface area to volume ratio with also high insulation as well. And this lower metabolic rate allows them to save energy but still keep warm. So they basically have more surface area and produce less heat, but they're able to trap more heat because of their larger surface area, which is really, really interesting. They also, in addition, they're quite locomotive, so they move around a lot. That helps keep them warm, and they rest a lot as well, so that helps conserve energy. Uh, the white fur as well as being good for camouflage, it actually reflects a lot of highly reflective, so that makes you prevent excess heat gain during the day. And also, behaviorally, these guys will keep warm in the winter by basically seeking shelter, also going to their body, things like that. And when resting, they'll sit in like a near spherical shape to keep warm, which basically means they have the maximum surface area they can. They'll also find shelter in rocks and things like that and stay out of sight of predators. And another thing as well is the body size of Arctic hares are actually significantly less in the winter compared to the summer because of decreased food and also decreased metabolism. So typically, they will get a slower metabolism during the winter to help save energy, which is really interesting. And in terms of their reproduction and lifespan, these guys breed between April to May, and gestation period is about 53 days, and so babies are born about May, June, July. And hares can have up to 8 babies, so an average litter can be 5, called leverets. And these leverets will stay with their mother. We'll have a look at the babies while we talk about them. They'll typically stay with their mother um, at home range until they can survive on their own. And they reach full size about late July, typically, about some weeks after birth. And they breed for their first time at a year of age. So they typically will breed after their first year. There's actually little information on the lifespan, but there has been estimates of about 3 to 5 years. But they do not do well in captivity, unlike a lot of species, and only live to about a year and a half at most. So they can live up to like 3 to 5 years in captivity. It's probably just husbandry. But these guys, as I mentioned, a little bit lower in the ecosystem. So their known predators of these guys include foxes, Arctic foxes, red foxes, wolves, lynx, ermines, owls, snowy owls, falcons, hawks, and falcons as well. And occasionally people eat them. The Arctic wolf is actually the most successful predator of these guys, and even younger wolves in their first autumn can catch hare. And Arctic foxes and ermines are smaller. They typically prey on younger hares. And Griff falcons can actually carry their hares to the nest. They cut them in half, and peregrine falcons have been known to prey on them in the southern parts of their range, and snowy owls target young hare. And there are typically considered 4 subspecies, but I don't think they're often that considered often in terms of taxonomy because they're not that distantly related together. But look at these wonderful hares. It's really done a great job. Nawala's done a great job giving us some interesting rabbits and things like that. So definitely a big fan of that. I really, really do love it. So another nice Nawala mod. Next up as well, we've got a South American animal this time. This one is done by Gaboy and Genora Pizza, the wonderful duo. We have got the Humel, or the South Andean deer. So he's another cool endangered animal. Let's see, there's the male. So the South Andean deer, Hippocamelus bialiscus, or also called the South Andean humel, the Southern humel, or the Chilean humel. These guys are an endangered species, or wimel, if you say that. These guys are an endangered species of deer native to the mountains of Argentina and Chile. And along with the northern gurmel, they're kind of the 2 mid-sized deer within the Hippocamelus genus that live in like high mountainous areas of the Andes. And there's not been too much study of these guys, but there have been some research into these guys. In terms of their description, the South Andean deer are kind of well adapted for broken terrain and difficult terrain as they have short legs and quite bulky bodies. They have a brown to greyish coat that tapers into white undersides, and they've also got a white masked throat and also kind of dark on their face there. The long kill hairs of the coats also provide protection around for cold and moisture. And typically does will get about 70 to 80 kilograms, or about 154 to 176 pounds, and stand about 80 centimeters tall. Or males a little bit bigger, about 90 centimeters tall, about 35 inches, and about 90 kilograms. So you can see males a little bit bigger than the females. The sexual dimorphism is notable. As you can see, the males are the only ones with the antlers, and they shed them every year during the air of winter. And also the males, as you can see, have this black mask to them, which is the heart shape that goes down their body. The females don't have this, and they also don't have antlers, so you can see the comparison here. That's what they look like. And the farther the ant is really awesome as well. They'll often congregate in mixed species group, and the length of time spent intermixing increases the group size. So the farther away they are from rocky slopes, the larger the size of observed groups have been found. And suggested predation rates are lowest on slopes and greatest around valley bottoms. That's kind of why they may hang out in herds in flat areas, because that opens them more up to predation. So these guys have live in a variety of different habitats. They prefer open periglacial scrublands, bluff and rocky areas, as well as upland forests and forest boundaries. And actually, one study of coastal fjord populations found males and juveniles prefer grasslands. Females mostly prefer bluffs and forms exclusively so, which is quite interesting. And guarana plants were primarily dietary item. And while they were previously found much over much of southwestern South America, the current state is critical, so they're quite critically endangered. They are considered endangered. Numbers in Argentina are estimated to be about 350 to 600 as of 2005, and kind of fragmented in different areas as well. And this has shown a lot of evidence. They've been criticized for calling for species situation. Like they've been trying to criticize and saying, hey, we need to get more research and more help to these guys so they can recover. And a lot of the pressures that have been affecting these guys and causing decline is economic activity and invasive species. So one study shows that the Argentina's Nature Valley Nature Park has formally found 32 plant diet items in its diet. And the most common is the Delega beach, which is actually quite eaten by red deer. So that means they outcompete the South American or South Andean humel because of eating that. So the red deer, which are introduced, outcompete these guys, which sucks. Which displaces them, and as well is also both decreased mortality and decreased reproductive rates may be affecting the population, such as predation of cougars, though that just should be naturally happening. That could be a big issue for these guys, and is a primary cause of their mortality in Argentina. So in terms of conservation, their population is estimated to range of shrunk about 99%, and they are considered endangered. And the main reason is habitat fragmentation and poaching, why is still main threats, but also, as I mentioned, introduced species such as red deer, they outcompete them. And there have been some people urging for the improvement of their conservation status and kind of trying to help, maybe put them as critically endangered would probably be warranted. But yeah, a very interesting animal. But there are efforts by Chile and Argentina to try and called the Memoriam of Understanding the Conservation of the South American Humel. So there's been lots of effort to try and improve the conservation status. So this kind of MOU kind of tries to address the issues. So there's believed to be 15,000 in the wild in isolated populations. So the efforts of these guys are trying to protect these populations, try and connect them, and kind of protect them from extinction and increase them as well. So they want to kind of allow populations to grow, shed between populations, monitor them, all that kind of good stuff. And they hold meetings and things like that. They hold annual meetings, and they're trying to create an action plan to try and monitor and reintroduce them into areas and try and just help their population grow, which is a really awesome thing to do. It's really nice to have two countries trying to help the species. Yeah, we'll have a look at the cute little fawn here. How cute. We want more of these little guys so we can have more humels in the future. Be a really, really awesome animal. Definitely a big fan of these guys. Much love for these guys. Really, really awesome mod. Of course, Gaboy's mods are always top notch. And speaking of Gaboy mods, we've got one last one. We've got another one from Chile. Really, really awesome, cute little guy by Gaboy and Genora Pizza. We have got the Cod Cod. So this is a really, really cool little cat here. So I know you guys love your cats. It's so cute. So they're also known as the Guinea, I believe you say that, or the cuckoo. They're the smallest felid native to the Americas, so they're quite small. They live primarily in central and southern Chile, as well as being found in some areas of Argentina. And since 2002, they've been listed as vulnerable, and their population is estimated to be less than 10,000 mature individuals, but they are threatened by things such as persecution, habitat loss, and loss of prey. So these guys have great variation within their fur. You can see they often have a brown yellowish to grey brown fur, and they have these dark spots along them with a pale underside and a ringed tail. The ears are black with a white spot on the back as well, and they often, as you can see, dark spot on the shoulders kind of merging to cause like a dotted streaks and things like that. There's also lots of melanistic or black codcods, if you can find the other one here. Oh, these little kittens. These guys are both little melanistic codcods. How cute. So melanistic codcods are quite spotted. Black coats are quite common. And they have, you can see that small head, large feet, and a thick tail. So it makes them like look a little bit different than a lot of cats. Really, really interesting. They're also quite small. They get about 37 to 51 centimeters, or about 15 to 20 inches, at about 15 to 20 inches. And head to body length is about short 20 to 25 centimeters, or 7 to 9 inches. And a shoulder height about 25 centimeters, or about 9.8 inches, with weights ranging from between 2 to 2.5 kilograms, about 4.4 to 5.5 pounds. So that's, for comparison, a really small domestic cat is about 2.5 kilograms. So a really large cod is about the same size as a really small domestic cat. So that puts it in perspective. In terms of their melanism, it's really interesting. The phenotype for the dark colors that you see there is actually caused by a deletion of a single gene or a GUT signaling protein, so that signals colors. So it's deletion of that gene that causes that, and it seems to be quite common in the population, which means that melanistic codcods are actually quite common compared to a lot of other animals, which is really interesting. And in terms of its taxonomy, these guys are first described in 1782 and from Chile, and they're from the genus Leopardus. They're closely related to things like Jeffrey's cats as well. Really interesting group. And there's considered two subspecies, but I don't know if they're often considered too much anymore. It's typically the one from southern Chile and one from northern Chile, central northern Argentina, and the other one's from central northern Chile, which is the type species. In terms of the habitat, these guys live in the more mixed temperate rainforests and the coastal ranges of the southern Andean areas, along with the Valladolian and Araucaria forests in Chile, which has got lots of bamboo in the understory as well. They also live in evergreen temperate rainforests and moist forests as well, coniferous forests, things like that. And they are tolerant of altered habitats, being found in forests and scrubs, as well as the fringes of settled and cultivated areas, but they do prefer this kind of forest habitats. They range from the tree line up to the tree line at about 1900 meters, or about 6,000 feet. And in Argentina, they're actually been recorded from the moist montane forests, and which have the Valladolian kind of temperate rainforest characteristics, with lots of epiphytes and things like that. So in terms of their ecology and behavior, these guys are active equally during the day as in night, so they're carthermal, and they typically will only venture into open terrain when they are in under the cover of darkness. And during the day, they tend to rest in deep vegetation and ravines along streams with heavy cover, and like to hide in like piles of dead gorse and things like that. They're also quite excellent climbers, as you can kind of see back there, and they're able to climb trees more than a meter in diameter. And they are terrestrial predators and will prey on things such as birds, lizards, and rodents in ravines and forest areas. And some animals they'll feed on is southern lapwings, austral thrushes, huithuits, Kilopotalacoa, if you say that, domestic geese, and chickens. So they will kind of take farmers' chickens and things like that, which means they get prosecuted, of course. Male codcods do have quite a big territories. They can have territories between 1 to 2.5 kilometers, or about 0.42 to 1.97 square miles, while females have a smaller ones from 0.5 to 0.7 kilometers, or about 0.19 to 0.27 square miles. And we'll talk about these cute little babies while we get a chance. Here's a little baby, a little black baby. Look at these cute little kittens, how adorable. So the gestation period for these guys lasts about 72 to 78 days, with an average litter size between 1 to 3 kittens, and the species actually may live to be about 11 years of age, so it's not as long as typical cats, but still real cute. Look at these cute little guys. How adorable are they? In terms of threats, the biggest threats to these guys to the cod is logging because of their moist forest temperate habitats, and the spread of pine forest plantations and agriculture, so it destroys a lot of the habitat where they like to live. And in central Chile, that's the biggest issue. And between 1997 and 1998, two out of the five radio-collared cods were actually killed on Chile Island for raiding chicken coops. So that's something that may be happening in the future as the habitat gets destroyed. They'll resort more to raiding chicken coops and get killed. So that's not a bad thing to these guys. But they seem to be doing okay in that. Other than that, so they are considered vulnerable, and a lot of the issues like habitat destruction. But they seem to be doing okay. There's still thousands of individuals, but it could change very soon. But yeah, really awesome animals. I cannot love the cod. And I think it's cool that we get some underrated South American animals. Really awesome. So, yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. Nice to see Gaboy coming back with some mods and General Pizza helping with the coding. Narwhal as well. We've got that new guy, Lotsky, did a great job. And Lorby as well with the Stalk, I cannot forget. So, yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. So I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always hit the little bell icon to get notified with anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.